Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah-Nicole Bostan, clinical health psychologist and director of behavior change strategy at Signos. In part one, I shared a bit about how we're living longer but with more diseases, largely metabolic in nature, with stress wreaking havoc on glucose as the culprit. I also shared how some mild to moderate amounts of stress is perfectly healthy, even desirable, so we don't want to get rid of all your stressors. Now, I want to share the good news, which is what you can do about it, even without medications. Remember last time I said if we're stressed all the time, insulin, the bank teller, gets too tired to work and help put glucose away into the vault for later use? So, what happens when the bank teller gets tired? Well, glucose continues to circulate in your bloodstream like a big wad of cash just floating around in your jacket pocket, and it starts damaging kidneys, blood vessels, even your eyes. Vascular damage can actually happen even in people who aren't diabetic but who have poorly controlled glucose. So, long story short, stress promotes insulin resistance through a whole cascade of cardiometabolic events, and stress can wreak havoc on our metabolic control, even if you're eating the healthiest foods most of the time and moving your body regularly. The field of biofeedback that I came from has done a lot of research looking at simulated stressors, which are stress tests meant to produce a response similar to real-world stressors, to see the impact that different kinds of stress can have on the human body. What's tricky though is that stress has no single accepted definition, so it's hard to nail down. It really depends what area of the body or brain you're interested in, but regardless of where you're looking, stress impacts the body at virtually every level of analysis. Metabolic stress is related to poorly controlled glucose and high glucose variability, meaning our glucose fluctuates a lot. But we can also look at psychological stress and its impacts on metabolic stability through other related areas like the hormone cortisol, how fast our heart is beating, how quickly and shallowly we're breathing, and how much tension we hold through our bodies throughout the day. One simple and ethical stress test that's commonly used is asking people to speak in public, which often triggers anxiety, as well as hormones like cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine that go directly to fat cells. And in turn, these hormones make insulin less sensitive during times of stress, so our fat cells have a hard time releasing it when we need it. In an early study looking at this relationship between stress, metabolic health, and hormones, a group of people with type 1 diabetes, known as insulin-dependent diabetes because people have to inject insulin since their bodies can't produce it independently, were split into two groups, one with well-controlled diabetes and one with poorly controlled diabetes. Both of these groups were asked to give a speech to strangers. But in the group of people with poorly controlled diabetes, glucocorticoids were secreted at a much higher rate, meaning that there was an exaggerated stress response associated with more poor metabolic health outcomes. Basically, what they found is the more stressed we are, the worse our metabolic health is. And the worse our metabolic health is, the more susceptible we are to experiencing stress in our lives. So we have a lot of evidence highlighting that stress, one, wears down insulin's ability to stabilize glucose, store it, and use it effectively as energy. Two, stress impacts almost all bodily systems. And three, psychological stress can have the same impact as physical stress. But where does that leave us? Well, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Stress management is one of the antidotes to metabolic instability. We don't have to be worn down by the modern world. As a health psychologist, I work on two ends of the spectrum, chronic disease and performance optimization. In order to have our bodies perform optimally for us and for as long as we want to stick around, not just in number of years, but quality of life we get to live, we have to prioritize managing our stress. There's just too much at stake not to. And the great news is we have so much opportunity to change the course of our health through how we manage stress. So if you're hoping I'm here to tell you how to eliminate stress from your life entirely, you're in the wrong place because, as I noted earlier, we actually need some amount of stress in our lives to operate effectively. But when we can manage our stress, either through modifying our responses or changing the environment when we can, that's when real physical changes start to happen. So here's a couple quick tips for managing your stress on a daily basis. And you didn't even have to pay a couple $100 in therapy for them because, frankly, I want everyone to know about these strategies. So, first, eat mostly real foods. Just like we can burn out our body's bank teller, insulin, through too much constant stress, we can just as quickly wear out insulin through eating highly processed foods. In the US, this is most of the grocery store except for the outer edges with vegetables, proteins, and healthy fats. Even if our stress response is raging, eating whole foods can offer some level of protective factor and minimize the impacts of glucose and insulin rather than magnifying your glucose variability through eating foods that lack basic nutrients. Second, I want you to practice at least 10 to 15 minutes of paced diaphragmatic breathing daily. You can put your hand on your chest and on your stomach and just pay attention to where that rise and fall is coming from. You want it to come from your whole torso and not just your shoulders going up and down. Inhale for 4 seconds before a natural pause, and then exhale slowly for 6 seconds before a natural pause. Do this at the same time of day every day and make it a priority, beginning and end of day, or even better if you can. Third, notice your mind's stories. This is quite possibly one of my favorite stress management strategies because it's relevant in virtually every situation you might find yourself in. The act of just noticing what your brain is telling you at any given stressful moment puts a pause on the automatic stress reactions that tend to lead to unhelpful strategies or behaviors that pull us farther from our health goals. Literally just noticing what's happening and whatever judgments your brain might be serving up at a stressful moment allows your body to respond instead of react. There may still be some bodily reactions happening, which is totally fine and expected, but bringing a bit of a mindful pause in the moment lets you be more fully aware of the context, effectively assess what kind of strategies will be helpful, like emotion-focused strategies versus problem-solving strategies, and evaluate new options in the moment. When we do this, we'll also be less physiologically reactive to the stressor and recover more quickly from the stressor, meaning you won't react quite as much to stress and you'll be able to move past it instead of just getting stuck dwelling on it. Fourth, do one thing that matters to you every single day. Meaning and purpose help people withstand even the toughest stressors. When you're in a stressful situation, before your next move, ask yourself, is what I'm about to do bringing me closer to who I want to be or farther away from it? This question can actually help with everything from deciding if you need that second serving of dessert, also to how to handle inevitable stumbling blocks in your life or on your health journey. Fifth, make sure to get 8 hours of sleep daily on a regular schedule. Research shows that stress, sleep, and metabolic health are highly connected. Sixth, move your body daily. This doesn't have to be intimidating. If you don't have a workout routine, starting small, making a habit of taking a walk outside first thing when you wake up and at the end of the day around sunset, great place to start. I also like to walk either before a meal or after a meal if I can to help regulate my glucose response, since it's something I can do for myself even if something stressful is happening. And last, prioritize your stress each day. Write down the top 3 things you need or want to accomplish. And if you set goals, set realistic and specific ones, because as human beings, we crave a sense of control and predictability. Small wins create bigger wins, which creates consistency and continued behaviors. And really any effort towards your health goals is worthwhile and shouldn't be minimized. So there you have it. Now you have a better sense for how your body, specifically your metabolism and glucose, responds to stress and how chronic stress leads to a number of health issues, even despite eating primarily whole foods and exercising regularly. Not sharing all this to be a downer, but to highlight that managing your stress should be an equal priority to the food you have in the fridge and that gym membership that may or may not be getting used. It's not just pie in the sky feel good stuff, and it's certainly not about taking more vacations, but those are nice too. It's about what you do on a daily basis to live your best life and manage stress, even when the situation seems entirely out of your control, which is definitely going to happen sometimes. I also briefly touched on different ways to monitor and measure stress, but if you only take away one thing from everything I said, remember that psychological stressors are just as significant as physical ones and will degrade our metabolic health if we don't do something about them. So the question is, do you want to pay attention to your stressors now or later when your body gives you no choice? I choose now, but I have to remind myself this regularly too when things get busy. It's not easy, but managing your stress proactively is worth it. And now you've got some practical tips to start managing your stress too. Though of course there's many more and they're easier said than done. It's helpful to pick just one stress management strategy and practice that for a few weeks. rather than trying to focus on too many of the ones I shared all at once. Remember, if you're stressed, you're human. Your body was designed to pick up on stress cues, and society doesn't do a great job of teaching us how to moderate our stressors. I'll be working on my own stress management too. Thanks for watching. Again, I'm Dr. Sarah-Nicole Bostan, clinical health psychologist and director of behavior change strategy at Signos. Subscribe to our channel to learn more about metabolic health, and I'll see you soon.